From Vermont's most trusted news source, WCAX brings you your newsmakers, your neighbors. This is You Can Quote Me.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm Darren Perrin.
And I'm Kristen Carlson. He is the only independent in the race for governor. Our newsmaker this morning is Dennis Steele.
Also, your neighbors in the news. We take you for a wild ride on the Rapids, meet a celebrated store owner, a report card on 2 first-time teachers, and proof that kindness goes a long way. It's all coming up.
But first, our newsmaker is Dennis Steele. He is a native of Vermont, or an Abnaki. His family has been here for generations. He now lives in Kirby with his family, and he's running for governor as an independent. Mr. Steele, thanks for joining us.
Nice to meet you.
Well, let's start with the first question. Why are you running? You may be a name that a lot of people don't know, don't recognize.
Well, it's important to me. I have 2 small children, and the reason I'm running is because nobody else is willing to talk about some of the issues that I want to bring up. The United States government has lost its moral authority. It's owned, operated, controlled by corporate America, Wall Street, and the Israeli mafia. Those are the key things that I want to do, and I want to see Vermont become an independent republic because of it, because it seems to be unanswerable to the American people anymore. It doesn't work for us.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the Vermont Independent Republic and what it stands for. But first, I'm just curious, you're starting with the governor's race. You're starting with one of the most important roles in the state. Why not start smaller, like run for the legislature and build up a record? Why start with the top job? Because
not one of them is willing to take on the issues. If they would have, as I started to be in these debates, as I was actually confronting them, I might have changed my mind. But yet they're not willing to take on any of the issues, the Vermont National Guard bringing them home. They're not willing to talk about becoming an independent republic, debating it logically. They're not willing to address those types of issues, and that is why I feel it's necessary for me to run. Besides my experiences, what I've done in the past, my business experience, I think as an independent, I think Vermont needs an independent governor. I think that's the only way you can actually work both systems, the Democrats and Republicans, and try to balance it out.
Well, you are very serious about this idea that Vermont should become its own republic. There's a movement in Vermont. There's a lot of members. I assume many of them are supporting you in the second Vermont Republic. Again, for some people, it might seem like a tall order. How can Vermont become its own country, and I guess you would become the king?
Well,
is that how it would work?
First, I'd have to become governor first, and then I would call on the state legislature to convene a special session to determine whether Vermont should become an independent republic. The only way we're going to do it is with the political will of the people. That's the way it has to happen. And I envision it happening in the small town halls throughout the state, and that's where the voices will come from. As this economic crisis deepens, we're going to have to seriously look at this issue. It's a valid issue. It needs to be brought to the table and discussed logically without fear of or the stigmas that are attached to it.
What do you think people are afraid of? Because I'm sure people might be thinking, this seems like a tall order. Vermont's such a small state.
Well, what are they afraid of? You know, that's a tough question. I'm really not afraid of anything, but one of the things I do get is, well, the United States, they'd invade us. I mean, that to me seems completely absurd. The United States is completely overstretched in foreign lands. There's probably 13 brigades in the United States alone. And when the political will of the people of Vermont, when they decide that they want to become an independent republic, the whole thing's going to get ready to collapse anyway. The United States is in trouble. It's a sinking ship. It's the Titanic, and it's sinking. And there's 3 types of people on the Titanic. You have the status quo politicians that say, hey, this is the Titanic, it's not sinking, I'm going back to the bar for a drink. Then you have the people that know something is wrong. Inside, they know that there is something drastically wrong, but they don't know what to do. And then you have us. We're saying, let's get the lifeboat. Vermont is the lifeboat. Let's get on it and let's go. So
you say this would start from the ground up. What if there are these town hall meetings and Vermonters debate it and discuss it and vet it and look at this idea and they say, no way?
Hey, that's what democracy is, but if we could actually show that it would work in that sense, if they said no way, but that means that they're willing to discuss it maybe at a later date, maybe when circumstances change, but the idea of discussing it doesn't seem that radical to me. I mean, that's what we need to do, is discuss the issue, bring it out into the open so that more people understand it, because once you get your mind around this, can you imagine, Kristen, a small European country in sort of similar to a European country, Vermont, in North America?
So we'd have our own currency? I mean, like, how do you envision this happening?
My vision for Vermont would be the Swiss model. They have a currency backed by a precious metal. We could have a currency backed, hopefully, by gold or some sort of precious metal. One of the things that the Swiss do is they produce 2/3 of their food on the Swiss Alps for 6 million people, with 10% of their people working in agriculture. Vermont could easily produce 2/3 of our food on the Green Mountains for the Vermont people for only 650,000 people. That is a food security. That is an idea that can be done because the Swiss have done it. They have one of the best healthcare systems in the world. They have a decentralized form of democracy. It's one of the oldest democracies in the world. We're 700 years old. They're also neutral when it comes to the military. What I want to see for Vermont is a foreign policy of non-intervention. So basically, they have not been involved in a military conflict since the 1500s, and they're fine.
If you were elected in November and Vermonters say, yeah, let's go for it, how long would it take to happen?
Well, gosh, I mean, if Vermonters voted for it and the state legislature said, yes, let's do it, it would just take a governor who has the courage to bring the papers, serve the papers to the United States, the President of the United States. Say, we're done, we're out.
I know you're very entrenched in this, and there is a movement in Vermont. But can you see from the outside looking in how it might seem far-fetched to people?
Oh, absolutely. But that's the whole idea. My running for governor is to bring this issue up, to make it seem so that people can talk about it. We need to talk about this issue because really when you actually put everything out, it's not crazy. It is actually a logical, feasible option for Vermont. We have a lot of the same traits as Switzerland does. Out of the 200 countries in the world, 50 of them are smaller than Vermont, and some of those 50 are the richest in the world. Vermont has very similar traits to Switzerland. We could become, in my opinion, we would thrive as an independent republic.
So you're banking on this idea that Vermonters would like this idea. So if you were elected and, again, Vermonters said no, what are your ideas to govern the state as a governor then and not a king if people say, hey, this is not...
But let's go back to the king thing. See, you want to use president, I think, because if we were an independent republic, then I would have to run for president. But see, again, my job would be to decentralize the power away from the centralized government. So basically the president would really have very little power. It would all be decentralized to the local level.
But what if you are elected governor and then Vermonters say, and this, you know, this you're very focused on this, you think this would help on economy, agritourism, healthcare, and they said, no, we don't like this idea. And then you're stuck with the model that we have now. Are you more than just a one-issue candidate? Are you able to govern in that situation?
Well, yes, because I would be willing to stand up to the federal government, and the candidates running for governor have not. For one thing, the candidates are not willing to stand up and say, listen, let's bring the Vermont National Guard home. That's what I would do as governor, even if we weren't an independent republic. The very first thing I would do is order the Vermont National Guard home. Whether this can actually happen or not, I mean, Governor Chittenden did it, and Governor Kunin did it. They both tried. But the point is, a governor can start talking about this. That's what makes the difference. I would bring in rural Vermont. I bring in the people from the Vermont Commons, and I would bring in the Campaign for Liberty. And we'd all work together, and I would actually meet with every single legislator at the legislature and talk with them about the issues we're facing and try to decentralize. I would decentralize our school systems. Locally funded and locally controlled schools are important. Rail systems, bringing back the rails. We have to think about moving towards an independent republic, even though maybe we're not ready for it. And that would entail decentralizing our school system, making sure agriculture, 2/3 of our food produced here in Vermont, our transportation systems, railroads, definitely railroads are key. I mean, if we're going to wean ourselves off of oil, we have to start looking at renewable energies. All of these issues can be brought up and worked toward with the idea that we will become an independent republic as the Titanic continues to sink.
How much of a chance do you think you have of winning?
I'm a long shot. Definitely a long shot, Kristen, absolutely. But, you know, Governor Jesse Ventura was a long shot. All across the United States now, incumbents are being kicked out. So I'm actually enjoying running for governor. I actually enjoy the confrontation. I actually enjoy getting out there and confronting the politicians on both sides. It's kind of funny because I'm actually able to work both the Democrats and the Republicans. I feel that I'm the only candidate that's going to be able to defeat the Doobie Brothers. And I mean the Doobie Brothers because he's colonel and general. His brother's general, and he's a colonel in the U.S. Air Force. Because basically I'm not a chicken hawk. And are you familiar with the term chicken hawk?
Well, I learned about it on your website today.
Okay.
Did a little research on your website.
Oh, good, good. So I'm not a chicken hawk. I served in the United States Army for 3 years. But I'm not pro-war because I know these wars are immoral and illegal and unconstitutional.
One of the questions that's come up is, you know, it's hard for sometimes a third-party candidate to get traction. You haven't been invited to all the debates. You've been at some forums, not all of them.
Right.
At one of them, you interrupted it. I think you maybe had charges, but they were dropped, I think. How are you dealing with that? And do you think, looking back at that one debate you interrupted, was that the appropriate thing to do?
I think it was definitely the appropriate thing to do. In fact, I would encourage all independent candidates to do exactly what I did, because that's what it's going to take to unseat the status quo. We have to be confrontational in a non-violent way by going up and interrupting these debates, because look, in my opinion, all the questions should be coming from the audience. They're the people that took the time, they drove there. It's disrespectful to not hear the questions from the audience. I was at the Caledonia Democrat debate last week, and the questions were all came from the chairman or whoever they came from. They didn't come from the audience. There were 3 questions that they finally got in at the very end, and the candidates were saying, we have to go. You know, it's time for us to go. We have another debate in the morning. And so I think it was really disrespectful. I heard a couple moans from the audience. Those questions, their questions didn't get addressed. I mean, what is wrong with letting the audience members stand up, ask questions, putting a mic in the middle of the room, and letting people line up behind it? Similar to what happened at the Franklin meeting when that farmer up there, the farmer in Franklin County that was going to have his land taken. What they did is they put a mic in the middle of the room, and everybody lined up behind that mic. That is the way democracy should work. It should not be these, you have to submit a question on a card, and then you don't even know if your question is going to get answered or picked, for that matter, and read by somebody else. Does that make sense to you?
So that's why you were frustrated. I'm talking, well, some forums you've been invited to and others you haven't. So when you sort of, was that what you were frustrated about, that you couldn't ask a question, or that you weren't part of it?
Let's back up. I had been going to the debates, and the first 2 debates I went to, they opened up the questions to the audience, and whoever stood up got the first question in. So I was able to get my question in at those debates. The 3rd debate I went to, they started shutting the process down. You had to submit questions, and then they would pick the questions. This debate was even worse. I mean, you had to have a ticket to get in there. So I called up because I have Radio Free Vermont, and Radio Free Vermont is an independent music station for Vermont artists. So they allowed me in the debate. So when they were talking, they brought up the whole issue of the deficit, $150 million. But not one of them was willing to take on the 800-pound gorilla in the room, which is $1.5 billion, which is Vermont's pro rata share of the U.S. Defense Department budget. So I yelled from the back of the room, what about the $1.5 billion? And I was told to shut up, sit down, basically just stay in your place. Well, I felt compelled to go down there, and I walked right down there and felt I needed to ask the question of the gubernatorial candidates and make sure that people understood that on the table is $1.5 billion. Those candidates are not addressing that issue.
Do you think it might turn some people off, though? I mean, you've used the word confrontational a few times now, and you've encouraged candidates that we need to be confrontational. Do you think that could turn off some Vermonters who are already turned off to politics?
Actually, I don't think it would. I've actually elevated my campaign. That's Front Page Times Argus. I have people in my hometown community, they look at me differently. They say, man, I saw you. I saw what you did. See, you got arrested. They're encouraging me now. I think that's leadership. We have to do this. We have to do it because it's the only way we can get our voice out there. Besides, we've got nothing to lose. We're independents, right? We don't have any noble status through the Democrat or Republican Party to worry about. This is what is needed in Vermont. We
Sounds
have
like
to
you're
be
encouraging chaos almost.
It's not really chaos. I mean, we're doing it in a very orderly way, in my opinion. I mean, we're going up there, we're asking questions, interrupting the debate. So there might have been a better way to do it, but hey, I was the only one. I'm the leader. I'm going to make mistakes in the very beginning, but if we all get together on this and start asking these serious questions, a lot of people feel disenfranchised because they feel they have no part in the system, they have no say, and this could bring back some of the people back into the political process.
You've admitted you're a long shot. What do you think will be a measure of success for you? This campaign will be successful if...
it's been said if I get 10%, it would be a success. But I'm looking at it saying if I get between 5 and 10% of the vote, and I create this stronger grassroots movement so that we open up the discussion, I actually feel like I've already been successful.
So what's next for you if you don't win in November? What's next for Dennis Steele the day after the election?
Well, the day after the election, I think what we're going to try to do is organize, now that we've created more awareness of the movement, we're going to try to organize a political party, maybe the Free Vermont Party. And start bringing issues to the table and try to get major party status. And I think we can do that. Once we've shown that this is a valid issue and we can work on it, we can work towards it, start running candidates statewide.
All right. Well, Mr. Steele, we'll stay tuned and follow you on the campaign trail. Thanks for your time.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Ooh, dropped my pen. I wasn't ready for the handshake. All right. And now here's Darren with our Neighbors in the News.
Kristen, thank you.